All right, everybody. Welcome back to Latino Free Minds. Hope you all been doing well. Thanks everybody for tuning in and for staying in touch with us and listening to our conversations. I think it's kind of funny. Well, not funny, but doing this, like actually having a podcast and talking about things, it's kind of cool. It's kind of I look forward to doing this and having these good conversations and then just seeing how people react to them. So, we're just, thankful to be here and hopefully as we learn, like we said before, you guys are learning and we'll just keep it rolling. How's everything been?
Good. Like you said, each conversation is exciting, just to think about having it.
Mm-hmm.
And as we think of subjects to talk about and stuff like that, we kind of step outside of our own comfort zones because we're not experts on these fields or anything like that. We're just, sparking up the conversation to learn about it. So it's interesting. We've got a lot of ideas. And I think that, what we're going to talk about today is one of the things that not only Latinos in the United States should be thinking about, but every American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty interesting how the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was created, presented, and ratified, and how it makes the United States completely different from any other country in the world, because the Bill of Rights and the Constitution are so unique in the sense that they protect the people's rights.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't just mean a certain race,
Certain group. It's everybody.
Group, exactly. It's, just the people of the United States. But if we don't pay attention to it and learn about it and teach our kids about it, then it could be taken away, and then we'll have to learn the hard way how valuable these rights are, to everybody.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that's the one thing about the Constitution, right? Kind of what you were saying right now is it's, the first words are, we the people. So we're the ones in charge. Obviously, we have the institutions in place and, in a sense, maintains order and it's supposed to run in a sense, in a way. So, not everyday people aren't having to kind of deal with that, make laws and all that. We select our representatives and hopefully they are representing us and making laws that better benefit the people, right? We don't want any laws put in place that are going to make or take away any of our rights, right? And then, one of the reasons I think this one came up was because as we were talking about, doing this podcast and all that, and when we were preparing for the first few episodes, it's one of the things that we both kind of agreed with is growing up, in a Latino home, we don't really hear much about the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. I didn't really know or hear or listen to anything about the First Amendment, the amendments, the Bill of Rights, maybe until I was in middle school. And, even then you're a kid, right? You're not even really paying attention like you should be.
Well,
but
you were paying attention in class, I guess, but if you just wanted to go outside and play or you hang out and you were just completing your homework to complete it and get a passing grade, then that was me.
yeah. And it's like it didn't stick, at that age, I guess. I didn't realize, I guess you could say, it's probably a lot of us didn't realize the importance of that. And living in a Latino home, it's not talked about. It wasn't talked about in my house about, the 10 amendments that we have and the Constitution and how we're the ones in charge, right? That those kind of conversations weren't had, and that's kind of how this topic came about, because we were both kind of in agreement that, hey, it's true. we don't really hear about it at home.
And here's the other thing too: is that did they really want to teach us that in school? Did they really emphasize it to the point where they should have? I mean, this is huge. If you think about it, what is bigger than learning about your human rights, your rights in your country?
Yeah.
And if I think back and try to remember how much the teachers emphasize this, I would have to say that I don't remember on putting a heavy emphasis on the importance that these carry. So I could be wrong. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, but I just don't remember. And I think it's one of those things where if you just had it for history or whatever class it may have been, it shouldn't just be one grade or in a couple of grades. It's something that should be taught at different levels at each grade that you're going through in school, just to emphasize the importance of it.
Yeah, because like you had mentioned before, it's not not every country has this. We're lucky enough to live in a country that when it was when this whole, how could you put it, the whole government or this country was set up, it was set up in a way that gives us freedoms, and we don't have to worry about being under a king or a dictator or anything like that. Or so that's why it's really important, because not a lot, well, we're probably the only, I think we're the only country with a constitution like ours that really gives us a lot more freedoms than other countries. Other countries might have some form of it, but they have limitations on freedoms. And as far as a country with a Bill of Rights that grants us a lot of freedoms to make sure that that we do stay a free people, this country has hands down the best one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And you got to think about too is the Constitution was written from people that were running away from a dictatorship, if you will. I mean, they're being ruled by a king and queen.
Mm-hmm.
So we can only imagine the things that they went through, the lack of rights that they had, and them reporting back to royalty, and
Yeah.
in the different classes that they had. So they had gone through really bad things, and they wrote it very well because they had gone through those things. So, and if you think about it, people have been trying to dismiss the Constitution for a long time and probably get rid of it. And it's lasted how many years? It was in 1787 when the Constitution was originally drafted. So
Talking
we're talking
about
about how many years? 18.
about 235, 236 years.
Yeah, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
And you listen to these politicians talking these, past I don't know how many years, and it's when they get sworn into office, they get sworn in to uphold the Constitution, and it really doesn't seem like that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah. No, it's true. You lose faith in the faith in the government, right? In your representatives and stuff like that, because as we just said, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights have been around for over 200 years. So there, in my mind, it's like, that's solid. It works. It wants something that's been established for that long shows that it works. Now, the people that we have to represent us is a whole different thing, right? And sometimes they might make it feel like, oh, this doesn't work, but it does. And just as an example, recent events that have happened, this past week when they were voting for Speaker of the House, it took about 15 rounds of votes, and the Constitution has set up the government to work that way, right? So we have I believe it's 435 or 438 representatives in the House. Mm-hmm. So each representing a different district throughout the United States, and the way that the whole vote thing went to eventually get Kevin McCarthy as the Speaker of the House this past week, a lot of people didn't like the process, how it was taking long. Some people thought it was embarrassing or this and that. But honestly, from my perspective, my point of view, to me, it was good to see that happening, because even though you had about 20 or so that weren't giving their vote right away just because, oh, this is the guy from my party, it's like they were fighting for what, they were elected to do. So, that's how the government was set up. And basically what happened that this past week in just that vote showed how government is supposed to be working.
Yeah. And that's an important point, because if you heard the news, they were talking about exactly what you said, how embarrassing it was, how long it was taking to get done. And this hadn't happened in the past 50 years or however many years
it was. Like 100
years.
Yeah.
So, but what they don't tell you is that before those 100 years, it took a lot of votes to make a decision. And think about that for a second, is that if in the beginning it took a lot of votes to make a decision for a Speaker of the House, right, the leader of the House, that means that everybody had their own opinion, and they had to come to many votes to come to an agreement. So think about that part of it, and now compare it to this part. So in the past 100 years, according to the media, it didn't take that long, and it was easily decided. So do you think that there was corruption in the past 100 years because they knew what they were going to vote for? Just magically, everybody was on the same page.
Mm-hmm. And then that just kind of goes to prove the whole, party over people representation, right? Because you have for years, right? Like you're saying, over 100 years, it's like if everyone's just voting for this guy because, oh, this is the guy that's, my party, whatever, let's just vote for him, let's get it done. Then you're not getting a Congress or a representative that's fighting for you. So I think anytime, I would say before, but now going forward, especially after seeing how that played out, like if you don't have at least a few that are at least trying to fight for something, then it's just all partisan, politics.
Politics as usual.
Yeah.
And following up on the point that you're making right now is that if the Republicans are making a decision that quick, 1 or 2 votes or 3 votes or whatever the case may be, they've made a decision on what they want to vote on.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of those congressmen and congresswomen are representing their district and what their district wants. So in other words, what their citizens want, right? Because they were elected by those citizens. So they have to make an effort and fight for what their citizens want. And again, if they make decisions on the first, second, third vote, that isn't happening. It's just not happening. So McCarthy had to make a bunch of concessions and promises, that he was going to have to bring to vote bills that they were going to have to bring to vote. They already started doing that.
Yeah.
And one of the best ones is the tax.
The IRS, the defunding IRS.
Yes, the IRS agents. How many was it?
It was 87,000 agents, and I believe the funding that they rescinded was about 80 billion.
Yeah. So me, for one, when we start talking about taxes, I hate it.
Everybody hates taxes.
Everybody hates taxes. So, um, and we can do a whole other podcast on that subject alone. But everybody thinks that when we get taxed, it goes for the roads, infrastructure, and things of that nature. But we really have to pay attention to, what taxes we pay, because
Mhm.
that money is already allocated for certain tax. Well, certain taxes are already allocated for infrastructure, um, and they're just coming up with new taxes just to
Mhm.
take money out of our pockets.
Yeah.
So, and that's a concession that McCarthy had to make.
Yeah.
And imagine if the votes would have just gone through like that. That funding of billions of dollars in all of those agents, that money would have gone straight over there, and then we would have had more IRS agents auditing us and
Mhm.
figuring out ways of how to take every penny that we have in our pocket and put it in the government's pocket.
Yeah, because I I can go out on a limb here, and I would think I'm right, because I don't, at least this is how I view it. You could be Democrat, Republican, or Independent, but I would bet a majority of us do not like paying taxes. A majority of us see our checks and we see that tax money leaving every time we get paid, and we don't like it. And like you said, right? And I think it's something that we had talked about in the previous episode, was like they're using this our tax money for things that we don't want them to use it on. For example, funding abortions. We don't. There's many of us that don't want to fund abortion through our tax money, and I think that's actually one of the ones that's coming up in the next couple of days, is voting to not use federal uh, tax
Funds.
money, federal funds for abortion, and just kind of getting back into the whole McCarthy thing. And it's like, yeah, he had to make the concessions, and they started up Congress and introduced the bills that they've. Sounds like he's. It sounds like he is pulling through on the concessions he made. So
Well,
I'll
here's
give.
the thing: is that people have to understand is just how they weren't voting for him and making it difficult for him to get the seat.
Mhm.
Um, Knowing that those congressmen and women did that, that if he starts going sideways and doesn't, come through with what he promised to do, they can impeach him and pull his ass right out of that seat too.
Yeah,
So I think at this point he knows that they're not playing games. So if he starts backing out right now, they'll start drafting articles of the impeachment on him too.
yeah, and I think that was one of the ones where one of the concessions was, if I'm not mistaken, that any member of Congress can pretty much bring up a vote and say, okay, we don't want this person as Speaker of the House, and also it would benefit him to whatever concessions he made, whatever deals they agreed with. He's going to have to stick with them, because at the end of the day, that's 20 representatives. It's not a lot. It's not the majority, but it's enough to not give them the votes they need for anything. So, yeah, they made it difficult to get him at the speakership position, and he got it. But now it's like, all right, you got to keep your word. You got to stick to these deals, because those same 20, I could see those same 20 just being like, you know what, you're going to introduce this bill, we're not going to vote for it. So they lose that majority that they have, because those 20 are very important.
Yeah,
People, as I was watching, it's like, well, McCarthy can't lose. I think it was 6 votes right at the time, and it's like, right at the beginning, boom, he was already down 6 votes. So okay, even though everybody's got a vote, still it's done, it's a wrap. Because
yeah,
at the end of the day, like we were saying before, it's partisan. The Democrats weren't going to vote for him, and no Republicans were going to vote for a Democrat, because that's just, at the end of the day, it still is partisan, and it's
yeah.
about their party.
And in all of this, we kind of got stuck talking about, what just recently happened because it's important, but it also shows that, the way that the Constitution was set up um, allowed this to happen,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that's how. smart. If you, I don't know any other way to put it, you know,
Yeah.
that the
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 founders.
founders or you know the ones that drafted the Constitution, how well thought out the language. It was very specific, well thought out. Um, when they wrote it, so it could exist for so many years.
Hmm.
You hear a lot of politicians, a lot of people out there, influencers, trying to say that the Constitution or the Bill of Rights isn't relevant to today's times. But if you think about it, it doesn't matter, you know, how the technology advances
Hmm.
or anything like that as time goes on, because you know, people are people. Whether you take them from one period in time to another period in time, yeah, technology changes, but
Hmm.
it's for example, they didn't on the Second Amendment. Excuse me, they didn't put a specific weapon, you know, that you know
Hmm.
we're able to bear arms,
Yeah.
and it's not a specific because they knew that you know in times you know the weapons were going to change,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
So if you fall into that group of people that think that it's not relevant in today's um, time and day, the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, really think about it. Because if you read the amendments, the way that they're written, it transcends
That's right.
periods in time.
Hmm. Yeah. No, and that's 100% true. And kind of just to get back to that, it's like we were saying before. It's a lot of people that come to this country come because the countries that they're in don't have these freedoms, right? You have countries that don't allow you to say what you want to say. First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. They don't allow you to be, a certain religion. Like right now, I think, one of the like in, for example, China. I believe you can't be a Christian in China, or if not, you're
Muslim, I think.
or Muslim. Yeah. Um, I don't know. I think we'll use Ukraine, right? I think you can't be an Orthodox, which is kind of similar to Catholic, but an Orthodox in Ukraine right now because they're going through the war, and somehow it's, I guess, a Russian thing, right? So each different countries have different ways of not having these freedoms that we have, right? You can't say anything negative about the government in certain countries, or else they'll come get you. They monitor everything you say,
They'll
and,
come knocking on your door.
they'll come knocking on your door just for speech. And that's the thing. To the point you were making is, regardless of the changes in time, the changes in technology, like that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, as people, we should want the freedom to say whatever we want to say. Obviously, people are going to say things that other people might not like, things that are offensive, things that are hateful. But at the end of the day, if someone is, if someone is talking that way, then you don't have to associate with them. We're people. We're free to decide, like, all right, this guy's dumb or this person's dumb. I'm not gonna associate with that person. I'm not gonna listen to that person.
Well, it
So
goes hand in hand.
yeah,
If you're saying something that I don't like, you have the freedom to, you know, free speech to express yourself, right?
right.
I also have the freedom not to listen to what you have to say and walk away or not pay attention to you. So
Mm-hmm.
it goes hand in hand. And in today's society, that's a kind of a big problem because if it affects us and it hurts our feelings or we don't like it, um, we want to shut it down, right?
Yeah. Instead of ignoring the person that said it, we want to affect everybody's ability to speak freely.
So what if I don't like what you have to say? What you say offends me.
Mm-hmm.
We can go in circles the entire time, but usually the people that shout out the loudest in regard um, to that issue. Wanting to shut people down because it's offensive, or they just don't like what they're saying. Period, because it's mean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it, it's causing a huge divide because they're not quite understanding what the freedoms are.
Yeah.
It's like you want to be free, you want everybody to understand you, but you're not allowing other people to be free and for you to understand them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a double standard, there's hypocrisy, and it's childish.
Yeah, it's very childish, and people like that are in a sense very like weak minded, right? Where it's to the point where, like you were saying, like I have to accept everything from your end, but you can't accept my end, and then I'm the one that has to suffer because just you can't take it, or whatever, right? And I don't think people understand the significance of wanting to have other people's rights removed or limited. That doesn't lead us to somewhere good, right? Like you said, you could go in circles so much with that standard where you get to the point where we won't even be able to speak,
Mhm.
because no matter what anybody says, somebody could find it offensive. you know
Well, look, we can take it in levels, right? So there's people that feel like that. Then you go to schools or universities and they want to cancel certain words for those same reasons. Now
hmm
they're taking our rights away to express ourselves or talk in the language that we want to use.
hmm
Then you go into government buildings and you're expected to limit words that you use, or you have to use additional words or meanings or whatever. And then what's next? Making laws,
hmm
limiting what we can say, or adding words, just basically changing the language so people don't get offended.
yeah.
You know,
And then
it's
that's something that, especially like with with the Latino angle, it's our language. The Spanish language is based off of masculine and feminine words, right? That's how what you're talking about. It's just that's how the language is set up. And to want to change
we would have
that,
to sign in order not to.
we can't say Latino or Latina. You got to say Latinx to include everybody. It's
Yeah,
like, first of all, it's like it's exactly what we're talking about. It's people that have put some sort of negative meaning to just a regular word, right? A word that's been around for years, history, and it's because they're weak. They're weak minded. They can't take it. So now people got to change words. They got to change their language. And again, now you're starting to limit. And the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, didn't say, you can only say what you want when you're talking in private, or you can only say what you want when you're on the phone, or whatnot. It didn't say where or when. It just said you have the right, the freedom, the freedom of speech to say what you want to say. And again, everybody should have that freedom, and that freedom should always stand the test of time, because as a people, if we ever want to speak up against anything or against the government, we should be free to do so. And that's something that, in recent history, with, for example, with all the COVID stuff, you couldn't speak against the government narrative. And that was one form of showing people, like, okay, this is what happens when the government starts restricting what you can and cannot say
yeah,
about certain things. So that right there should have been a huge eye opener for people as far as our freedom of speech, and how it was limited through the government.
yeah. Right away, if we were well versed, and I'm talking about all of us, I'm not talking about certain people. I'm talking about me, you, um, peers, everybody, family members, is that if we were well versed and we were being told that we can't express or say certain things about what we see with our own eyes, we would have gone, whoa, 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 whoa. wait a minute, you're violating my First Amendment, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? It's like that didn't even come. It's like they don't want us to understand it so that they can violate it, so that they can suppress it.
Yeah, and then going back to the whole manipulation thing is people have been so manipulated to think that that was okay because
Yeah,
they were quote unquote in this sense they gave you a guilt trip. You're trying to save lives, so don't spread misinformation because more and more people are going to die if you say this or this or recommend to use this or that. So that was in recent history one of the major times where our speech was very limited and controlled by government and these you know these places where people get information, right? So um that's why it's not good. And then so that's kind of free speech and freedom of religion. And the First Amendment has a few things actually, and it's the freedom to assemble. So everybody's free to get together and peacefully protest.
yeah,
And again, if you protesting is speaking up, right? It's speaking up against something that you're against. And the key word though is it's peaceful. And and it's again recent history. We saw a lot of protests that weren't peaceful that were being described as peaceful and
well, not happening at all.
happening exactly right. And then the one protest that got all the attention was the January 6th protest that yeah, they went into Congress and all that, but on nobody got hurt compared to the riots that were happening the previous year. I mean, January 6th was nothing, but again, you're led to believe that those riots and all that protesting didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, businesses were burnt down. Um, I think it was like 20 some odd people murdered.
Hmm.
Um, Federal buildings destroyed. Businesses burnt down.
Yeah.
Um, there was a lot going on. I think, what was it, in Seattle, Portland, somewhere over there?
Oh yeah,
They took
Seattle.
over an area.
Yeah, like a
Um,
whole block or something.
yeah, and January 6th, there was a lot going on there. There was lies spread. People, Miss Abbott was murdered, but that was by, I believe, the Capitol Police or
Yeah.
something. I could be wrong, but um,
Yeah. That day, as far as I know, that's the only person that was killed that day.
yeah, and they did say that other officers died, but it was misinformation because it came out the following day that that officer that did die was from a heart attack, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm.
So yeah, if you heard it out in the news, it, like we said on the other episode, it was probably a chismosa or a chismoso that you need to fact check them.
Yeah.
So going back to the Constitution, we're talking about how important it is and how it's been implemented in recent history. You know what we've gone through
Hmm.
recently, but um, the Constitution was originally drafted, like we said, in 1787. The Bill of Rights, which was, I think, 12 amendments were presented in, or maybe it was a little bit more, but 10 of them were ratified, and those are the Bill of Rights. So it's 1 through 10,
Hmm.
and they're obviously really important. And we're gonna concentrate on the first and second a little bit more right now because we're going to show the difference between Mexico and the United States, and only because that's where our roots are from. Parents are from there.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I can tell you from being around my family and visiting Mexico is they obviously they have limited free speech. They can't really express what they would like to express openly.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. And on the last episode, we were talking about the cartels, and this is the best example of why it's important to have those two rights. A lot of people say that the Second Amendment is to protect the First Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. But in Mexico, when we used to go visit over there, people don't have firearms, but there's a lot of criminals with firearms.
Yeah.
There's a lot of police with firearms, which is, if they weren't corrupt, that that'd be totally fine. The government, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But people should have a fundamental right to protect themselves.
Yeah.
In Mexico, again, it's a really good example because they don't have something to protect themselves with, and they're overran with criminals.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if you want a recent story, it's kind of talking about the Second Amendment and how the government, the cops, they have their guns, the cartels, they have their guns. Nobody's stopping them from being able to have weapons, right? And knowing that they do have the weapons, they're the ones that are more than likely causing the most chaos in down there, right? They're keeping people in fear because what can the people do? The people don't have anything legally. They don't have anything that they can get themselves to protect themselves. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to the Second Amendment, it's one of those things that we have it here in the United States, and we're thankful for it because it's not, people don't buy guns because they want to kill people. People buy guns because they want to be prepared in case something happens. And luckily here in America we have that right. We have that privilege to to own a gun, and if something were to happen, someone breaks into your home, someone's trying to hurt your family, you're able to protect yourself. You know, when you're in a country like Mexico and you got the cartels running wild and they have firearms and normal citizens don't, then there is no way for them to fight back a fair fight, really. The
Yeah.
the cartels are going to do whatever they want to do. Like recently, I think they arrested Chapo's son, right? And once that happened, there was, you would see all these videos of the cartel shooting up. I think they shot at an airport, and they're just kind of just going crazy trying to get this guy back.
Yeah. Man, it goes pretty deep because you start thinking about old stories about everybody that's listening to this. Look up Fast and Furious. So it's an operation where firearms were being run down through the border. Lo
Mm,
and behold, who ends up with the firearms? The cartels,
right.
criminals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not okay for citizens to be armed, but it's okay for criminals to be armed.
Yeah.
And one big misconception or or a topic that's avoided, and I wish politicians here in the United States would turn to the camera and really tell the truth, is that the right to bear arms is not to hunt. It's not, to go target shooting or anything like that. It's to protect yourself and protect yourself from a tyrannical government.
Yeah.
Straight up, that's the
Mm-hmm.
truth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and from my experience, criminals are not going to go out and buy a legal gun. They're going to go out and buy an illegal gun that can't be traced.
Yeah.
Lawful citizens are the ones that are going to go and purchase a legal firearm. But there's people, that have troubled lives and have, committed crimes with legal guns. We're not saying that that's not going to happen. But if you do a percentage of people that protect themselves with legal guns versus illegal, I mean, it's going to far outweigh it. You won't think it will, but that's because news networks don't report on all the positive cases.
Yeah.
They report on all the negative. So if we just hear the negative, it's going to skew our judgment. They're guiding us, they're manipulating us into thinking that that's the only thing that happens. But again, we have to think for ourselves, be open minded, and if you want to protect you and your family, what would you do?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, just kind of looking at this, it's like, the people in Mexico can't arm themselves, right? So again, the cartel has all the guns, they have all the chaos, right? Like Danny said, Fast and Furious, chances they probably got the guns from us. But just but since he got arrested, it says at least so there's been 19 gang members, probably cartel members, that have been killed, and 10 military personnel um, died during violent clashes in northern Mexico, state of Sinaloa. So it's like that's just from arresting a guy. So it goes to show that what Danny was saying right now, the criminals, the bad guys, the guys with bad intentions, they're not going to follow the law. You can't buy a gun in Mexico. So, how do these cartels end up with them? They go and a criminal is going to do what they want to do. And like Danny was saying, is a lot of the times on the news, it's like the negativity that gets the most spotlight. It gets the most attention. But the good, positive stories when it comes to gun owners and things like that, is those don't get attention because it goes against the narrative, right? If they're trying to manipulate people and make them believe that guns are bad for you, and then they want to get rid of that, it makes no sense, because then you end up in a situation kind of like what Mexico's going through now. And at the end of the day, that's just, you feel for them, because again, if they had the ability to protect themselves, I don't think there'd be that much chaos in Mexico when it comes to all that illegal activity. Maybe it would control some of that, the drugs that get run through there. But
Well,
people,
here's the thing: is that people have to understand this is that in Mexico, if a city is overrun by the cartel, they'll go up to everyday citizens, like normal, people that don't seek to be in a gang or in a cartel, but they'll give them an ultimatum. It's like, okay, so someone in our, let's just say a friend of the family in Guapan, Michoacan, he was a police officer, right? And when all this crazy stuff started happening, the cartel goes up to him and goes, look, you got two options. You can continue being a police officer and we'll take care of you, or you can come and work with us. So the ultimatum is basically you're going to die or you're going to come and work with us, right?
yeah.
So my point is this: he can defend himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's a police officer, he's on his own. All the other police officers are probably corrupt, right? And
Yeah.
they've been given the same ultimatum, right? So what does he do? He turns into a criminal
Mm-hmm.
or flees.
Yeah.
So if people had the right to bear arms and they had the rights like we do here in the United States, guess what he would do? He would assemble with his neighbors, his peers, community members, family members,
Mm-hmm.
and they would be able to defend themselves against these people that give them that ultimatum.
Yeah.
But they can't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's a perfect setup for crime to take over.
Yeah, and it has, like you were saying, it's in here in the United States. We have the Second Amendment to help us protect ourselves from a tyrannical government, right? And then if you look at it in Mexico, it's they got a corrupt government,
Corrupt.
and it's not just that. Now they have to worry about. Now they got to worry about all this cartels and all that. So they have two different things that they have to fight against, and they don't have the ability to be armed to do so.
Yeah. That's why it is really tough, but it just emphasizes how important the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are. They
Mm-hmm.
should be taught with a great deal of emphasis, throughout, you know, elementary, middle school, high school, into college, and and let everybody know the fundamental rights that they have and how important they are. Uh, when they don't bring them up and minimize them, you have people like Feinstein in government, where I think it was a TV interview. She said, "Yes, Mr. and Mrs. America, if I could come and take your guns, they're gone."
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
she didn't say that word for word, but she said something to that effect. It's not a quote, but that's what I can remember. But that's what these people would want to do.
Yeah.
Some of the people, this is exactly what they want to do. And thank goodness for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, because though that's the block
Mm-hmm.
that won't allow them to do it. That's why the news networks promote all these ugly, negative stories that are out there,
Yeah.
and that's their main objective. That's their main goal. If they could, force us to shut up and silent our voices, different our differing opinions to their opinions. If they knew that we couldn't protect ourselves, do you think that they wouldn't hesitate to shut us up?
Mm-hmm.
We already found out that social media companies had a direct, like a hotline, if you will, with politicians. Politicians were telling them, ban them. Can you imagine if we didn't have these rights?
My goodness.
Oh, we would live. The United States would be an echo chamber of information that they want to transmit, and that is it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the um I think I think they call him a fake Mexican, Beto O'Rourke. Even he had said, when they asked him like about guns, he's like, "What do you say? Hell yeah, we're gonna take your guns," or something like that.
I
And
think it was directed to the ARs or.
yeah, the AR-15s. Yeah, he said, "Hell yeah, we're gonna take your AR-15s." Um, and it's funny because there's the kind of, as you were saying that, I thought about it's called the Gonzalez flag, and I don't know if you know which one that one is, but watch. I think you've seen it before, but this one right here,
Oh, okay.
the come and take it flag. Um, so just to kind of give this history here, it says the come and take it flag is a symbol from the Battle of Gonzales that prevailed through 183 years of Texas history. The flag stood for defiance against Mexican dictatorship, and today the flag's meaning remains rooted in Texas pride. So, even then, this flag, the famous "Come and Take It," uh, was fighting against Mexican dictatorship. So it's kind of, as you were saying that, like I kind of remembered. It reminded me about that, and you know, even then and now, it's maybe Mexico doesn't have a dictatorship, but at the end of the day, the government it has in place hasn't done anything to give them any more rights, or let's say even this is the thing that I don't understand. Like Mexico is right below us, uh, and they see the United States, right? Obviously, like we talked before, a lot of people from Mexico, from Latin countries, want to come up here because the opportunity that's provided, and at the end of the day, the freedoms that they get here compared to maybe where they're at. And my thing that I don't understand is, if Mexico sees how, or any other country in general, let's just say any other country, sees how well this constitution works for its people, like, why don't they just duplicate it?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it's probably a power thing, right? When you start giving the people the power, then maybe that's not something they want, but it makes you wonder why we're so close. Everybody wants to come up here. Why not just duplicate it and give the Mexican people the same freedoms that we have? You know?
Yeah. Well, I think the people, the citizens from other countries want to come up here. They don't know this, but they're coming here because we do have a Bill of Rights and we
Mm-hmm.
do have a Constitution. So they see how free we are and how we can express ourselves and everything. They don't know why,
Mm-hmm.
because they weren't taught that our Constitution or Bill of Rights.
No.
Um, but the other thing that they don't know is that our politicians are trying to take it away.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to be more like the country that they're coming from. That's the
Yeah.
little untold dirty secret, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of messed up, the way that it works. And what you were talking about is that, so those citizens that are coming from those countries, that's why they're coming. But the government from those countries are going, damn, the U.S. gives their people way too many rights. That Bill of Rights and that Constitution is garbage.
That's too much.
That's too much, man. It's like,
Well, like you
um,
said, even our politicians think it's too much. Well, some of them.
well, wasn't it Hogg when she was being sworn in, and they asked her to, they were swearing her in, and when the question came up, to uphold the Constitution, didn't she supposedly laugh or giggle or?
Yeah, she was like giggling in that part when it's the when they tell you, will you uphold the Constitution? And basically you're supposed to say, I do, right, as a representative in government. And just throughout that whole thing, she was like giggling. So it's like, okay, yeah,
They're laughing in our face.
yeah, it's a joke to them.
Yeah. So, and right now is where we're talking about that. It kind of reminded me something pretty important. I know we're focusing on the First and Second Amendment, but there's other ones that are really, I mean, they're all important.
Yeah, I'll share this screen. This one has the 10
Well,
the
it's number 6. I'm looking at it here.
Mhm.
Rights of accused persons, an example, have a right to a speedy and public trial. So
Mhm.
basically, what that means is that um, before the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, I could be wrong, but the king and queen uh, and their clergy would accuse people of crimes,
Mm.
and they dragged it out. They dragged out those trials and everything. So people potentially were sitting in a jail cell waiting for their trial to come up for many years,
Yeah.
and they would never bring it up. And that was a form of obviously punishment. And that's why it's an important amendment, because it's one of those things where they can't just throw you in jail and throw away the key. If they're going to
Mhm.
throw you in jail, you're going to have a speedy trial to, basically for them to show that, you are guilty and give you a sentence and get that sentence started right away.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's I think that one, like you said, the seventh one is the right to a jury trial. So then that way, like you said, if you're accused of something, you have your right to be decided right by
your
12
peers,
jurors, your peers.
yeah.
And also the eighth is protection against cruel and unusual punishment. So, for example, let's say if they do find you guilty, you're not gonna get punished something that's excessive to the crime.
Yeah.
It's gonna fit. So, those three right there are, and the fifth as well, right? The fifth gives you the freedom to not basically speak or testify against yourself or incriminate yourself.
Yeah. Protection against unreasonable search and seizure. Basically you need a warrant or, with probable cause for that to happen. That's the Fourth Amendment. So going back to the original point in the beginning of the video is that if you read these and you're being honest with yourself, and you're going one by one, you could see how it transcends time. With today's new technology, it really doesn't change this. We have new platforms where we can express our speech, or where we can assemble. It could be freaking what we're doing right now in
A Zoom call or
video conference or something like that. But the right should be the same. It's not like technology is really changing that. Right to bear arms. With technology, we have new firearms, but we have the right to those new firearms because the government has access to those firearms as well. A lot of people use, well, you can't get a fighter jet or something like that, or a tank. But you know what? If I could afford one and I could take the time to learn how to use one, I'd probably buy one. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah,
but that's not reality.
Or they'll say like, what would, and I think a couple politicians that even said that, like, okay, what's your AR gonna do against a fighter jet or something, or a bomb? And it's like, well, once government officials start talking like that, that's exactly what the Second Amendment was in there
for. They make a point.
Yeah, they make your point. And then just another thing that I thought of too when we were talking about the Second Amendment is, right now a lot of people are anti-Second Amendment. A lot of people are like, well, only the police should have guns. And it's funny because a lot of the people that say that tend to be the kind of people that don't trust the police at all. So it's interesting that they would want the people that they don't trust to be the only people that are armed. And we can see, like, we've been using kind of Mexico as an example, but we can see Mexico has a system where their police officers are armed, but the people aren't. And how's that working out?
Yeah. You know what? And firearms are kind of crazy because they can make, they're the ultimate equalizer. And what I mean by that is, let's just take an example because there's a lot of stories about this, is that a female protects herself against an intruder or, someone that's trying to abduct them or something like that, right? So we're talking about, a guy that could easily overpower a woman and, do what they want, with the woman, for example, abduct them or beat them, rape them, or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
So what I mean by the ultimate equalizer is if that woman, knows how to protect herself with the firearm, turns around and shows that she can defend herself against them, it's the ultimate equalizer. I don't care how big that guy is. I don't care how strong that guy is. He isn't going to do anything to her.
Yeah.
So, we can't lose sight of that. Again, we can look into statistics. How many women have been able to protect themselves or their kids against someone. That'd be pretty interesting to look up. Rather than just being brainwashed by, whatever the news networks want to show us. So, and going back to that comment that you made about, politicians, they'll say, what are you going to do against our, a bomber or whatever the case may be? It's like, well, if we get to that point and the people have to defend themselves, I doubt if they would make it to the jet if if people still have the right to bear arms. They wouldn't even get on that damn plane
Yeah.
uh, to do anything.
Yeah. I mean, you would imagine, right, that they wouldn't. But I think it was who was it? Because I think it was Eric Swalwell. He had tweeted something to that effect about what are you gonna do
Mm-hmm.
with your gun? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's these politicians are just kind of again going through their party line, their what their group wants, right? The whole manipulation against the Second Amendment. Um, it's there's a saying that what is it? Guns don't kill people. Uh, what's the full saying? Guns don't kill people. People kill people, or something like that.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly it.
it's like, yeah, like if someone's a gun owner, again, like I had said at the beginning, a gun owner doesn't buy a gun hoping to actually use it on a person. That's not why someone buys a gun. Someone buys a gun just to be prepared in case someone does want to hurt their family. Then, like Danny said, it's the ultimate equalizer, right? Because you never know. It could be one person that is bigger than you, outweighs you, or it could be several people.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, when something like that is going down, God forbid anyone's ever in that situation, you want to be able to fight back with the best um, tool possible, right? And in a lot of cases, in those kind of scenarios, yeah, the gun is going to make you equal, and chances are you're going to be able to better defend yourself.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think it is a really important amendment in the Bill of Rights because it protects all the other ones. And
Yeah,
it's like that saying that I said earlier, the Second Amendment protects the First Amendment. And, it's because everybody really knows the First Amendment, but the Second Amendment protects all the amendments. That should be another saying.
yeah,
Um, in Latino households, I mean, I've heard so many people against owning firearms, and I would think that they would actually be the ones that understand it the most. Would see its importance the most,
yeah,
and to take it to another level, if they really studied the Constitution or knew enough about it, not necessarily studied it, but they know about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, I think it would just stress the importance of being able to protect it.
yeah. So it was Eric Swalwell.
Okay.
We're talking about like how the Second Amendment is to fight against a tyrannical government. So this is what this smart guy said. He said it would be a short war, my friends. The government has nukes, many of them, too many of them, but they're legit. I'm sure if we talked, we could find common ground to protect our families and our communities. So instead of just saying we could find a way to find common ground to see what works, he said this junk at the beginning and basically said, yeah, you're not going to beat the government, which is
Yeah.
all right, man. That's a problem.
Yep. Well, my response is we need protection from you.
But yeah, I just wanted to share it because I know I had seen. There's someone else that did it too, but
Yeah, someone before him. I could be wrong, but I think it was someone before him. But I think one of the first people to reply to that tweet made it very simple and short, and it's like you just made the case for the Second Amendment. or something like that. So,
Yeah, that just exactly it makes the case exactly what the again talking about how the way it was written it stands the test of time. Exactly, you proved the point that this amendment was written 200 years ago. You proved that point today. It's like it has no time limit. The Bill of Rights is what it is. The way that those guys made the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, was because they lived through it, right? They had gone through, like you're saying, living with the king, living with a government that maybe falsely imprisoned them, that didn't allow them to have arms to protect themselves. So they did what they had to do. They came out here, and they created this constitution, which allowed this country to grow as great as it's grown. And at the end of the day, it's they lived through that. That gave them that forethought, that knowledge, and knowing, all right, when we set up our own place, these are the things that maybe the people should be able to do. And yeah,
yeah.
it stood the test of time. I would hope that the Constitution, these Bill of Rights, are around for as long as this country is a country, that we have those Bill of Rights.
You look at Canada.
Mm,
They're straight up saying that they're banning firearms.
yeah.
Um, the protesters, the truckers that were protesting, they what did they do? They they blocked their bank accounts.
Yeah.
That's what a country looks like when they don't have the freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a constitution or bill of rights like the United States does.
Yeah.
So you get out of line, and the government will whip you right into shape. Get back in line.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's what we want, go ahead and protest the Constitution, protest the Bill of Rights. You hear a lot of arguments that it was a bunch of white people that wrote the Constitution, and for that reason, it's not valid. Get you
Get that
know
out.
ex-
Yeah, that's dumb.
get that out of your head. Look at things um, with an open mind. Don't get influenced by other people being in your ear, whether it's politicians, doctors, teachers, your peers, or whatever. Really read that and see if you can decipher any from those words, any racism.
And as a matter of fact, now that you say that, it's like it doesn't matter that it was a bunch of white men that wrote it, because at the end of the day, if you were to pick someone from a random whatever country you want to choose that doesn't have these rights, and you give them the option, do you want to live in America with these rights, or do you want to live or stay where you're at with these rights? I'll
Mm-hmm.
bet you 99.9% of the time they're going to choose America, and they're not going to care that it was white men that wrote it. They're just going to see that these are the freedoms they have, and it's like, okay, yeah, I don't have these over here. Yeah, I'd rather be over there.
Yeah.
It's simple. It has nothing to, like you said, it has nothing to do with race. But again, people always got to find something, right, to throw race into. And
Well, they've been manipulated.
yeah,
They they've been brainwashed to think otherwise.
yeah,
It's like if we go back to that screenshot, it it doesn't specify which people have those rights.
yeah, no, yeah, you're right.
Those are the rights of the people. That's it.
Exactly.
So
And like you were saying, right, it doesn't say what gun or what gun you can or cannot have. Um, it doesn't say here, the First Amendment. It doesn't say the Bill of Rights for whites. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't specify. It's for everybody. It's for all men and women. And this is what
yeah,
it is.
as we're looking at this, I mean, this is more just to be funny, but I see freedom of speech. Man, I wish some people didn't have the freedom of speech because I don't like what the hell is coming out of their mouth, but you know, and some people assemble that I really wish wouldn't assemble, but I don't want everybody's rights to be taken away
Right?
because of that.
Yeah. And that's it sounds funny, but it's that simple. Like, just why do my rights, or why does somebody have to lose their rights just because I can't,
Because I don't like it.
I
Because I
don't like
don't.
it, you
Yeah.
know? Like you said, yeah, there's people that I wish weren't talking and saying what they're saying, but at the end of the day, I'm not gonna, like I said earlier, I'm not gonna listen to them. I'm not gonna watch their shows. Like, for example, you know, like all those late night shows, they're all super manipulated, super liberal, and all this, and all the jokes that they say aren't even funny, and it's just dumb stuff. It's like, I don't like what they're saying. I don't want them to say what they're saying, but at the end of the day, I'm not gonna shut them down, and it's just like, all right, I'm not gonna watch them. I'm not gonna listen to them.
I've got a good example for you. So, comedians used to be funny.
Tell me about
And hold on.
it. Comedians, man.
I was going to die. Well, comedians used to be funny, right?
Yeah,
So sometimes we'll sit at night going through the, different, I don't know what you call them, they're not even channels anymore, but
the streaming platforms, pretty much.
yeah, you're just looking for, uh, a special, like a comedic special.
Yeah,
And, you give people a try and, you start hearing the first jokes that they're saying and you're like, damn, that sucks, but let me see what they got. And you
yeah,
get a chance after a chance. Wait, one more. Maybe they're just like they're they're gonna get funny right now. And no, they didn't get funny. And then I
yeah.
just turn it off and I change it. But I don't think to myself, you know what? Those jokes were so not funny that he shouldn't be allowed to tell those jokes. It offends me how not funny he is, and I want him off the networks. I want him canceled. I want her canceled. It's
Right.
like I don't think that. I
And
just
then
go, he sucks, she sucks.
not watching them again.
Change the channel,
Right.
right?
That's funny.
Turn off the
Yeah.
special.
And that's the thing, man. Comedians are supposed to be the ones that, again, it's comedy. It's not real. It's just to cause people to laugh. But man, like, a lot of comedians just lost it. They're so woke, right? That they
Well,
can't even be funny.
these people that are childish, that get offended, are the people that are trying to take away the First Amendment. They don't even know it, and they would disagree with what I'm saying right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really what they're doing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. And,
they,
and like you said, they don't even know it. They just
they
think
don't even know it.
it's just all about themselves, and you know they don't think about the, what do you call it? What's that word? The repercussions,
Consequences.
consequences of trying to shut people down.
Yeah.
So
And the establishment encourages that. They know exactly what they're doing. They're like, hell yeah, let's shut them up.
yeah,
And then, they're like, yeah, we're on the same team. Let's shut them up. And then they shut them up. And then guess what? The establishment turns around and goes, you know what? I don't like what you're saying. You shut up too. And then you're like, wait,
exactly.
me
Yeah.
shut up? We were on the same side, man. What's going on? It's like, not anymore. Shut
Hmm.
up.
Yeah, it's like when that standard that you're fighting for, and by taking away other people's rights, eventually will come back to you, and you're
Oh,
gonna say something that isn't gonna fly, and there you go again. You go in circles with it to the point where nobody's gonna have the right to say anything. and again, comedians, they've gotten super weak because of that. Comedy was supposed to be something that kind of, how could you say, like, it pushes the envelope, right, on offensiveness, but it's a joke. It's just, all right.
It's satire.
Yeah. Even music, right? Even mainstream music, rap used to be against the what do you call it? It was like
Establishment.
anti-establishment. Now
Right.
it's just, whatever the narrative is. So, it's just, that's a whole nother topic, right? That's probably could go more into the conversation we had about manipulation when it was with those kind of, entertainment and all that. But it's part of it has been affected because, yeah, people are trying to control speech, though. So in
Yeah.
a sense, it is kind of tied into what we're talking about.
Yeah, man. It's very interesting. Just thinking about talking to our family members, it's like going, hey, tío, ¿qué opina de los derechos de las personas, la constitución y todo eso? It's like, ¿qué?
Yeah.
¿Qué es eso?
¿De qué hablas?
Yeah. Ni qué constitución, ni qué nada, I would say,
Yeah.
but
¿Preferías tener una arma o todo el pinche desmadre que hay en México ahorita?
yeah,
Hey, it's, I think, yeah, like you said, they don't think about it that way, right? But once you start to break it down and start talking about the Bill of Rights and the freedoms that we have, then okay, I think it's more understandable. But like we said at the beginning, it's things that don't get talked about. So
yeah,
you just kind of, like you said, you don't realize the importance of them.
yeah. And we talked about when we're being influenced, they train your mind from a very young age um, to not use your mind in a common sense, in a very pragmatic way. And check this out. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because the Bill of Rights, the Ten Amendments, if you go down the list, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is almost instinctual. It's like instincts for a person. Like if you know, instinctively, you know that your voice matters, right? And
Right.
you shouldn't, um, you know, not express yourself or give your opinion, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
something that you naturally feel that you have a right to do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
defend yourself. Someone comes up to you, shoot, or trying to hurt your family, you want to defend yourself.
Right.
So you know, you don't want to be taken advantage. All the other ones would kind of basically cover you not being taken advantage of by the government.
Mm-hmm.
And those are instinctive things. Like if someone's trying to trick you into incriminating yourself or accusing you without probable cause, that's an instinct. You go, wait a minute, you have no right to do that. You don't have any basis
Yeah.
to do that. So it's all these. What I'm getting at is that they're washing away our our instincts
Mm-hmm.
to protect ourselves, to express ourselves. So it's kind of funny that way. I don't know. I just had that thought in my head and thought it was interesting. Is that these are instinctive emotions, feelings, reactions that human beings have
Mm-hmm.
that these rights are protecting. It's pretty. I don't
And
know.
then,
Seems kind of
yeah,
deep to me, but I don't know.
yeah. And then as you were saying that, I kind of had this other thought that, these amendments here were written by people that, they did believe in God. It was a Christian foundation, if you will. So,
Mm-hmm.
or if you want to call it, they had a good moral compass, right? Uh, and I think that's why this Constitution, these amendments have lasted the test of time, because they were done in a way, like you said, that natural instinct. It's like that moral compass that says, yeah, this shouldn't happen. This is good. This is bad. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's
It
why,
almost goes into like these are your God given rights type of thing.
yeah.
Right?
And then, as we talked about on the first episode, I think was when we mentioned it, is like, well, we're dealing with people nowadays that have no morals and no values. So they'll make you think that these amendments, these freedoms that you have need to be limited or taken away because, a person has their God-given rights. And I believe like in the best way that they could, that's what they created with these documents.
Ooh, you just made me think of something. So you said, okay, these people trying to take your God given rights away, they have no moral compass. So they're trying to convince you that you don't deserve these.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have, you know, a foundation like that, you could potentially be tricked into why do I deserve these?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. And
or
yeah,
why do people deserve these? You know, um, we're serfs, we're beneath these people that are running the government. You know, these politicians, we're beneath them. I say, hell no.
yeah. For sure. So, the Bill of Rights and all that, it's the importance of them. Like we said, it has great importance, and that they stay the way they are, right? Never allow anyone in government or any representative or any institution to betray your rights, basically, or to take away your rights. And if we see that happening, it's like we have to call it out, because we're able to, through those rights, we're able to speak about what we see that's going wrong in our government. Like you were saying, right? People come to this country and they don't think the government is corrupt, and it's like, yeah, it is. It's not as noticeable maybe, but they do it behind closed doors, or where they think it's not going to get out, but
I just got a thought.
out.
The corruption would be more noticeable if we didn't have these, if we didn't
Yeah.
have the Constitution of Bill of Rights. That's why they're like, God damn those Bill of Rights. If it wasn't for those pesky Bill of Rights.
Right. And them saying whatever they want to say. But it's true. Like, again, they do it in the background when they think nobody's watching. And just as an example, even the whole the Twitter file things, right? That was one example of like how they were censoring people. Again, going against our Bill of Rights, our First Amendment, of saying what we want to say, but they were doing that behind closed doors. And I don't know if they thought, okay, this is never getting out, but again, they were doing it, and it's not, either way, it's not right. And as people of this country with the rights that we have, we should always speak out about that and not just let it slide, because if we just let it go, then next time they do it, all right, all right, we got away with this much last time. Let's see how much more we can get away now.
Yeah. But what do they say? Winning by inches.
Mm-hmm.
They try to go for the 60-yard, pass touchdown.
Yeah.
That's noticeable. Everybody's going to notice that. But
Yeah.
if they hand it off and they win, they gain 1 inch. Okay, that's not as noticeable. Nothing's really happening there.
Yeah.
But then they hand it off again, and then they gain another inch, and then they hand it off and gain another inch. That's the whole
Yeah.
strategy, if you will.
Yeah.
They're chipping away an inch at a time, boom, boom,
Mm-hmm.
boom, until they get exactly what they want.
Yeah.
So,
And that's sometimes too how we have to, in a sense, fight back, right? We have to get that inch back, because at the end of the day, right, I'm sure we want our touchdown, our 90-yard touchdown, and boom, we win. But
yeah.
the way that
Well,
this battle is like, if they take an inch, we got to take two back.
Yeah.
and we're not going to get everything we want in one play. Basically, we have to, and it's kind of like what we were talking about, like when you vote, right? You're voting for things that are less extreme in a sense, because like you were saying, you can't put the whole e-brake on, right? You can't score the touchdown right away sometimes, but you got to take what you can get, right? And maybe it is an inch, but you keep going and going and going until you hit your goal.
Yeah. Well, thinking about it that way, it's like, do you want them to throw that 70-yard touchdown, or do you want to knock their asses down, you know, every inch that you can?
Right? Yeah,
So,
it's a good way
you
to put
know,
it.
maybe they fumble it at one of those points where they get injured and, we take the ball. But I got an idea, Latino Free Minds t-shirt with the Bill of Rights, you know, in
Okay.
the back, or
Yeah,
even
yeah,
in Spanish. And
yeah.
¿Qué es eso?
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm working on the gear and stuff like that, getting some shirts. But we could come up with some ideas. That chismoso shirt, that would be a good one too, like we were saying last time. So uh yeah, we can get people to support the cause, and keep this running. If you haven't, visit the website. The website is probably where, once that all gets set, we'll probably throw those on there. So yeah, we're doing what we can to get the word out. And again, I think for the people that listen to this, and that are, let us know that they are, like, they enjoy what we talk about. Not to kind of, what do you say, pat ourselves on the back and all that, but heard people say, yeah, it's conversations that people need to have, or people need to hear. So it,
Or didn't even think about having.
yeah, yeah.
Like
So
if I'll admit, um, I didn't know the importance of the Constitution or Bill of Rights. Well, I wouldn't say the majority of my adult life now, but going through my 20s, I don't think I really
yeah,
paid too much attention to it. I had two kids by then, and it's one of those things where if if I had paid attention to it, I would have emphasized that a little bit more with my kids.
hmm,
So, you know, maybe we aren't thinking about it. Maybe we should be thinking about it. Maybe we should tell our kids the importance of those. They're
yeah,
over there telling them, I don't know what in the world is more important than that right now. I don't know what kids are doing these days, but, you know,
yeah, yeah. No, I think that should be something that hopefully it sparks. This conversation kind of sparks that, where people are talking to their kids more about the Bill of Rights, or themselves are looking more into it. Just like you said, thinking about it, like, oh yeah, this is why I can
mhm.
do this, and this, right? This is why I got the ability to do that. So, the Bill of Rights are super important. Should have more focus, like we were saying, and it should be more focused to the kids as they're growing up, so they know what rights they have. So when they get to be young adults and become a voting age, or whatever, they're able to tell if there's some kind of law, or some kind of politician, or somebody that's running, that wants to take away their freedoms or restrict their freedoms. They already know the importance of the Bill of Rights, so they'll know, hey, you know what?
They know their rights, period.
Yeah, I'm not going to vote for this person. This person's trying to, mess up my Second Amendment, my Third Amendment, my Fourth Amendment, whatever. And they'll know. So when they come to make those decisions, they're definitely more informed, and I guess know more of the importance of what they're voting on and who they're voting for.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
not to make this go any longer, but for example, in California, right, we just had that one, it came into law this year, where a doctor can't say anything that goes against is it the CDC or
Yeah.
or something like that. And it's like that is a law that goes against the First Amendment, right? Because no profession should be compelled to just go with the government narrative. No person, let alone profession, but just person in general shouldn't be compelled to go with the government narrative or lose their job. Like that right
Yeah.
there, that's one recent example and a law that got passed that is in effect as of this year in California. So, just kind of goes to show you that people sometimes don't understand that, and they've been manipulated to not see that bill getting introduced and all that, and then it coming into law, and then they don't fight about it, and they just let it happen.
Well, there's a there's this quote. Actually, it's in I believe it's in the Constitution. Any law that is repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. Period.
That's a good one.
So, I mean,
That's about every law in California.
yeah, that's exactly it. It's like if we're walking around and someone telling us that it's illegal, it's like it's against the Constitution. Therefore, it's null and void.
It's repugnant.
Period.
Get out of my face.
Yeah. We need a shirt, a hat, repugnant. You repugnant.
There you go, another shirt right there. But yeah,
I mean, it just goes back to knowing your rights, and we're not saying that we know our rights. Shoot, we need to learn more of our rights.
Yeah. I guess every day is an opportunity to learn, right? And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Cool.
All right.
All right then. Well, that was a good one. Hopefully people are able to get something from here and keep the conversation rolling. But thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
All right.
Later.
Later.